This is episode 270, where we're chatting about not waiting until you get sick to shift. We're talking about the obsession over tracking when it's right and when it's not working for you. Signs you're ready to make keto your own and what that feels like. The difference of eating through love versus no love. Dedication to self, how to commit to your wellness in a non-disordered way. Common or normal doesn't mean that it's okay. And we really go through what's common, what's normal, why it's not okay. Preventative living practices, and so much more. Our guest today is Torie Borrelli, who's an integrative holistic nutritionist, published author, chef consultant, recipe creator, and wellness expert based in sunny San Diego. Torie is the author of the Mexican Keto Cookbook, the first cookbook to feature ketogenic recipes with traditional Mexican flavors and ingredients. The cookbook serves as a resource for anti-inflammatory living with delicious recipes and is now available on Amazon and in retail stores such as Target, Barnes & Noble, and so much more. In 2015, she founded The Vita Well, a wellness and education brand rooted in preventative living, and has worked alongside leading and progressive naturopaths, chiropractors, acupuncturists, and local San Diego doctors for the last decade. Torie used her personal struggles with food to inform her mission and shape how she works with her clients. Her battle with health issues at a young age heightened her awareness of the effects of food and nutrition can have on the body. The concept of "you are what you eat" became her lifelong journey. Approaching wellness from a preventative standpoint fuels her passion to help others to not fear food. She loves teaching people how to live a healthier life, but be it as simple as adding adaptogens to their daily routine or educating them that fat doesn't make you fat. Torie is a regular contributor to food and health brands and is a wellness recipe consultant for a number of major companies such as Lyft Headquarters, The Butcher's Daughter Group, Siete Foods, Chosen Foods, Rancho La Puerta, Thrive Market, Butcher Box, Kite Hill, and so many others. Torie and her husband Josh divide their time between their home in San Diego and their certified sustainable home in Scorpion Bay in Baja Sur. Okay, before we get to Torie and I's chat, which was so awesome and I'm so inspired by her story, if you have a dedication like us to take care of your body and you're looking for just more support and guidance, I highly encourage you to check out happyketobody.com. If you have questions about today's content, you can go to healthfulpursuit.com/contact and ask me. Your question will be added to the roll of podcast questions that I answer on the podcast. So if you want me to answer one of your questions on the show, you can go to healthfulpursuit.com/contact and get it in there. You can catch up on previous podcast episodes and notes from today's show by going to ketodietpodcast.com. Once you're on that page, just scroll down a little ways until you find episode 270, and that'll include all the links and resources and all the things that we chat about. Also, before we get started, because Torie and I are chatting about so many things, I don't want to interrupt anything. So I just want to tell you now, Perfect Keto just changed up our podcast deal and it's really exciting. I haven't ordered a bunch of things, but I definitely will. I got to do it. I got to put it on my list before the free nut butters are gone. So if you go to perfectketo.com/KDP, use the code KDP, you're going to get 20% off everything. Okay. Everything on Perfect Keto, 20% off. Plus free shipping, plus a free nut butter on orders over $80. So if you've used the code in the past, usually you can only use the code once, but we reset it. So if you've used the code in the past, you can use it again. So exciting. So the free nut butter is like a while supplies last thing. It'll probably last until December. So if you're hearing this like December 2020, get on it. Oh my gosh. I hope you can still get a free nut butter. I love Perfect Keto. I love everything that they create. It makes it so much easier to eat keto, having their products around the house or in your gym bag, in your purse, literally wherever. Their bars are deliciously perfect. I love them to pieces. So again, perfectketo.com/KDP. Okay, let's do this thing. Hey, I'm Leanne Vogel. You're listening to the Keto Diet Podcast. I've created a free guide with tips on how to start keto and maintain your fat-fueled life. Grab it at healthfulpursuit.com/free as a little thank you for listening to the show. Hello, Torie. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so glad you're on the show here with me today.
I know, I'm sorry for lagging, but we did it.
Yeah, we made it happen. We've been planning this for months, it feels like.
It's been months, actually. The longest, slowest months ever.
Seriously, it's like it never ends, but it's like good to like take a pause and assess new things. And I'm so glad with this pause, I've been able to actually interview people, and it's been really nice to just sit with another human and have a conversation.
Yeah, I've done a couple podcasts, and the format that you had before I was a little bit intimidated to do it by myself, just because I felt like I couldn't be as engaging as like people would want to listen. Like people want real time. So I'm glad this worked out.
Me too. Okay. So I have to know, first off, for people that don't know who you are, I'd love for you to share the ins and outs. I know I shared your official bio, but I always like people to introduce themselves too. And I love to know how you found keto, because I love hearing like people's keto origin stories.
Okay. So it's interesting because like as a nutritionist, personally, because of my just health struggles and battles and things that I've just always am looking for the next thing or what's going to make me feel better. And I'm the kind of person that I will never tell anybody to do something unless I've done it. So I've done everything, literally, from a cleanse to, being vegan to paleo, whatever. So I started eating a high fat about probably 6 or 7 years ago. I had just gone down to nutrition school and was working for a doctor, and he was a cardiologist, and he was kind of anti, and I was like really into it. And so I was just kind of like, okay, I'm going to try this out. And the first thing for me was that like I was not hungry. And I don't know, I always had a fast metabolism. I always was like very active. And so I always was constantly eating, of course, healthy food, but it's like, I always felt like it was like, I was always having a snack and all these things, and eating keto, all of those things went away. And so I would say just like that, I started just experimenting with it. And then Bulletproof actually came into my life. I started doing consulting for them and getting a lot of free product. And so I started doing the Bulletproof coffee and it with intermittent fasting. And so I just kind of was hooked, and then sharing it with people and seeing, how they were doing it. And of course, I don't think that, you need to do it all the time, like 100% of the time. But for me and most people, especially women, you're going to feel so much better just eating a higher fat diet altogether. It doesn't have to be necessarily quote unquote keto.
I love that you mentioned that. That's something, as you've been doing keto for a while, because you said 6 years?
Probably probably. I am really bad at time, but I think probably.
Aren't we all?
Definitely probably like 6 or 7 years for sure.
Yeah. So I know like with my experience, when I first started keto, it was like, okay, I have to do it exactly like this. And I did it exactly. You did the same thing. Like,
were you super into logging?
Yeah. Like logging everything, tracking everything, weighing everything. And it made me go crazy. Like I was insane I remember having a complete meltdown because I had weighed my broccoli, but I couldn't remember if I weighed it before I cut it or I weighed it before I wet it. Like I cleaned it, and then I was worried and I had a complete anxiety attack.
I'm actually glad that you said that, because I know that I'm probably jumping way ahead right now, but like in my book, in the beginning, I write about, logging your food and how it had such it was a mental crutch for me. And it really kind of made me obsessed with food. And obsessed with food in a negative way, and like weighing and calculating and logging. Like I do think that for some of my clients, they have no idea where calories are coming from. And so logging is like a very eye-opening thing, but for preventative living and just for overall like healthy eating, logging your food is kind of, is very, like a struggle for the mind and stressful. And so I write about that in my book, and that's why I didn't include nutritional analysis for all the recipes. Like I specifically did it for a reason. And I had people be so mean to me and give me 1 stars on Amazon because I didn't include nutritional analysis on my recipes. And it was super hard for me because it like really hurt my feelings, but it's real. Like it's a real thing that like, if you really need to download an app, download a free app and do it for a while, but it's not something that I like think that is very, necessary for long-term health. So
yes, I know that I sat in front of the manuscript for my first book and my second book. Like, should I include the nutrition information? Should I not? I mean, I had nightmares about it. Like, if I do, then I'm feeding into the system. If I don't, people will be angry. And it's like, when used properly, I totally get it. If you're first starting keto and you're new to all this and you're like, I just need a template, 100% to know the numbers is helpful. But it's like the obsession that comes for addictive personality humans and just those with maybe a goal to lose weight and they're listening to all this feedback on people, it can get out of hand.
Yeah, 100%. And like, it's hard for people that have like read everywhere, like if you don't hit your macros, like you'll never achieve goals. And it's so not true.
Yeah, it's so not true. But it also takes time. Like, you know, women listening to this right now, maybe a couple months or a couple weeks into keto, we're 6 years. Like I just celebrated my 6-year anniversary last month. And
we're the same timeline.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Okay, awesome. And so it's going to look different. And I think the major takeaway that I took from all the book tours and meeting with women and working with them one-on-one was like, keto starts to change our bodies and change our minds and change our life. And we still think that we need to be following the same protocol. Like, but it worked for me in July of 2014. Well, girl, you got your hormones back online. You're going to the gym every day. You're feeling great. Of course, your keto has to change to adjust for the body that you're now in. And I think people have a hard time wrapping their head around that one.
Oh, yeah, I 100% agree. And that's the thing with everything, right? Like at the beginning, it's a learning. So like there's a learning process and you have to figure out what works for you. And, you know, it's not just bacon wrapped in butter. And that's a big misconception as well, that once you kind of figure out, okay, like I love these vegetables with this and, you know, this is a great way for me to keep my macros at the level that I want and the level feeling the best. But again, like, especially women, for me, like I was super active when I was really doing strict keto, quote unquote. And like, I needed to hit specific macros, but then during my cycle, it would totally throw me for a loop and I would feel starving and I would just have all this like negative self-talk and all this stuff. And so I felt I'm going to do a little bit more carbs. And now knowing what I know, like I always, and I don't know if you do this with your clients or did this with your clients, but had them eat a little bit more, especially women during their cycle, have a little bit more carbs and they feel better altogether. The men don't need it as much, but that was something that really worked for me and nobody really was talking about that.
Oh, I remember standing on the stage for Ketocon in like 2017. And this was like before carbs were accepted in keto of like carbing up. And I remember presenting and thinking people were going to throw tomatoes at me. Like I was so scared. I almost didn't show up like 4 times. Because it's scary, you know, like when you put yourself out there in that way. And I'd love to know what your experience was through that transition of like, you've started keto, you're tracking everything. And then at what point did you just decide, I'm gonna jump off and do my own thing? Was it like a progressive thing? And what did it feel like? I'd love to know like what made you shift and realize things needed to adjust itself.
I would say that listening to my body, which is something I've had a really hard time doing, and I know most women share that, just because someone said that you need to do it this way is the way that I thought I needed to do it. And I'm super science brain. And obviously I love food. I love to cook and all those kinds of things, but I was really like sticking to my goals. And then I kind of like had to like take a mind reset. And, you know, I would go like being really strict with being like, I just wanted to be social and go out, and I was single and doing all those things. And it's hard to, you know, be strict keto when you're going out and trying to like be normal. So I kind of gave myself a break and started listening to my body. And I, you know, like I said, I struggled with a lot of stuff, dietary, like just gut stuff and some anxiety and big hormone stuff. And I can't remember what exactly, there's probably a lot of books that went into it because I'm one of those people I'm constantly listening to podcasts and reading and trying to learn more for myself and for others. But I just started doing, so the first thing I did was I was doing rice and I would let it cook, and I would cook it and then I'd cool it and then I'd heat it up again because I read that like the resistant starch was actually lower carb, and I felt super good with it. And I'd always cook it with fat like butter, MCT oil, or coconut oil. And so I started doing that, and then like eating some sweet potatoes. And, you know, I come from a Mexican Italian family. And so my mom's side is Mexican, my dad's side is Italian. My dad was in the restaurant business. Everything we do revolves around food. And so when I would go to my parents' house, my dad would always be making everything from scratch. And, you know, I just would kind of like let myself eat there. And I always was so scared that I was going to feel so sick, like how I used to when I was super young. and I didn't. And so I was like, maybe this is like you're making it worse than it actually is. Like if you're going to eat some carbs, like it's not going to be the end of the world. And I was actually, checking my glucose. I was wearing a continuous glucose monitor, doing all those kinds of things, and really seeing that like 2 siete foods, tortillas weren't going to throw me out of ketosis. So I was like, all right, I'm going to start to like experiment more with this. And then I just, use my clients, and people want to feel like they can eat for a special occasion, things like that. So I would do like a 5-day strict thing and then let them have 2 days of not like, I don't like to call them cheat days because it makes this negative positive connotation with food. So I like to say like, a little bit like something that you really love, or, cook a recipe that's fun and maybe not strict keto. And so I would see their feedback, and it'd actually be meeting their goals and just feeling better overall across the board. So I was like, there's something to this. So I kind of called it like adaptive keto is what I would say. And, it was still real food. It was still like vegetables and healthy stuff. I mean, I wasn't telling you to eat like white bread and stuff, but I saw, for me, I felt really good. And so for others, the same.
Yeah, that's so good. And I love that. And I think people hearing that, it's really powerful of like, wait a minute, I actually don't need to follow this template. And something that you said too, when you were surrounded with your family, I like to think of the food that's created when I'm with family, or even people that I love, my chosen family,
Right.
food that's created with love, around love. And you're just sitting around the table, and yeah, there are carbs and sugar, whatever, but just like really truly being present there with your family, quote unquote, and you're surrounded by all these foods that were made with the intention of nourishing those that are loved. And I often think about that if I ever get like, it's so rare nowadays where I'm at a dinner party and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't eat anything, panic. But if I do have those like little feelings, I'm just like, all this food was created by love. I'm surrounded by love, and I'm just going to let this into my body, and it's going to create, you set the intention before you eat. And I find that that's so different than when you're sitting at home with a tub of ice cream. You've had like the worst day and you're just like pounding the ice cream, like what I'm doing is so wrong. I hate my life.
I completely agree. 100%. Like I read a really interesting article back when this was all going on, and I was just doing some self-testing, and it was like, if you're standing up at your desk, scarfing food, whatever that food is, and you're so stressed out, you're not even absorbing those nutrients. It could be that bowl of ice cream, or it could be lettuce. And so that was pretty eye-opening to me because, I feel like women especially have this really hard time with stress around food and like guilt. And I always tell people, I'm like, if you're going to feel guilty for eating that pizza, don't even bother. Thank your body for being able to like feel that yummy taste when you are chewing that piece of pizza, because you deserve it. And when you can wrap your head around that, then I really do believe that, like what you're saying, like the love that is being put in the food will go into your body. And I know that kind of sounds hippy dippy, but it's so, so true. And it makes you feel so much better afterwards too.
Like momentously better, like so much better. And so now, as a recovering human that had bulimia and anorexia and all the things, when I sit down with what I would have considered to be like binge food in the past, and I really just sit with it, and I like look at it, and I get present, and I make a beautiful plate around it, and I just sit there and like really enjoy it. I find I don't eat as much because I'm fully present and I'm not feeling the shame and guilt around the food that I'm eating. Because then, like if you feel shame and guilt, you're just going to want to eat more because you say you're never going to be able to have it again because this is the last time I'm going to eat pizza. I swear. Ugh.
I know. And I mean, I was the same as you. Like I lived so many years, probably 15 years, where I was like, oh, I'm gluten-free, I'm dairy-free, I'm egg-free, I'm nut-free, I'm grain-free, and it was like, it really like affected my mental state because people would be like, you're making that up, or that's not a real thing, or, and I was doing gluten-free before gluten-free was even like a thing, and it was really, really a struggle because I didn't feel like I ever was normal. Mm-hmm. And so transitioning out of that and being able to share that with people that are really struggling with gut stuff, that, they do a food allergy panel and it says they're allergic to everything. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about this. So being as hard as both of us, had those experiences, I think it's really, I try to think about it as like, I've had those experiences so that I can help others now.
Completely. And I think dedicating one's purpose of like, I just want to help others. That was my biggest thing through writing books and programs and everything, is like, I just want to help one woman that's struggling like I did to not struggle like I did.
My exact same goal, 100%. And like, that was obviously why I mean, you have a lot of books, but like for my first book, it was like, why do I want to do this? I kept getting that question. And I was like, well, I just want to help more people. And me working one-on-one with the client is that's not, I won't be able to reach as many people. And so I did build a lot of nutrition and just little tidbits of what helped me throughout my health journey. And, we're still always on a health journey, but like my critical years where I wish I would have known what I know now. And I wish I could have had a mentor, someone helping me, because, I went to endless doctors and they told me I was crazy and I was depressed and I was making it up and that I had an eating disorder and all these things and take this pill. And it was no one ever talked about like the nourishment that comes through food and perception. And yeah.
It's really a dedication to self is what I hear from you, is like, I know what I'm feeling. Okay. I'm not crazy. There's something going on. And until I figure it out, like, I'm just going to keep searching and I'm going to keep uncovering. Would that be fair to say?
Oh yeah, 100%. And like for me, because I did love food and I come from that, the both my parents just being the culture of food being everything, and family was something that now it's like, I just want to teach people that food can taste good, food can be nourishing, and food doesn't have to hurt you. Because I was so scared of food because every time I ate something, I was so sick and no one could really tell me what was going on. And, I've had every label diagnosis from celiac to Crohn's to Hashimoto's, at 14 and all these things. And now I honestly I struggle with some things, but I do think that a lot of those things, especially like things like Lyme disease and autoimmune, are being overused because the Western medical system is just, they don't have the tools, unfortunately. They weren't taught this in medical school. So people like you and me who have had our health challenges, but now we understand it. Like, that's why I work with a lot of doctors and naturopaths, because we've teamed up to be able to help people reach their goals in a different way, where the doctors look at it one way and then I look at it completely different at like the food side of it. And then we can give people the tool to be able to go home and do it themselves and hopefully share it with their families.
Yes, completely. You mentioned health issues. I'd love to get into what those were. Like you said that you were so sick and in pain, and I'd love to kind of set the tone, because I'd also love to pick your brain on inflammation and anti-inflammation and how that all ties into low carb. But I think it's helpful for us to know kind of what your symptoms were and how this anti-inflammation or anti-inflammatory rather protocol really helped.
Yeah. So it actually started from being a baby, but I didn't really put any of that together until my later years, but I was a super colicky baby. People just say that that's normal for babies, which it's not. And then I just always kind of had dealt with constipation and digestion issues. And obviously when you're a little girl, it's like really embarrassing to tell people that you haven't went to the bathroom. My Mexican Catholic mom, like, you don't really talk about those things out loud. And so I kind of just would be like, I would go like 7 to 10 days without going to the bathroom. And I was really thin, but I was playing really high level soccer from the age of like 13. And I remember so specifically like everyone would go get bagels after soccer. And I was probably 13 and all the girls were talking about like, oh yeah, like going to the bathroom and going number 2. And I remember being like, oh, I don't remember. Like, I don't think I've done that this week. And one of the girls' faces like looked at me like I was crazy. And till that moment, I never knew it was weird not to go to the bathroom. Like, I was like, oh, I go once a week. And people were like, what? And so, we traveled a lot to Mexico. So I definitely, I dealt with a lot of parasites, but it took about 4 years for me to be fully diagnosed. I had a tapeworm. And so when I was diagnosed with the tapeworm, I had seen 17 doctors, and every single doctor basically told me they did these like fancy lab work, but never a parasite test, never, a heavy metal test, never a mold screening, none of that. It was all very Western. And I was just told like, yeah, like what I was saying, like, you are bipolar, you're anorexic, you're making these things up. Like, cause I was like, every time I eat, I feel sick. And, basically back then I mean, still even today, I just don't think that a Western doctor that you're telling, and they would prescribe me laxatives and like depression medicine at 14 and all these pills they wanted me to take that would quote unquote help me go to the bathroom, which was my only symptom is what they would say. And I found a naturopath and she found tapeworms and all these other kinds of things going on in my body. And at that point I was eating 5,000 calories a day. And my normal weight at that time when I was like 15 was around 90 pounds and I was at 72 pounds. And, I was like very mentally screwed up because everyone at high school was telling me that I was anorexic and my soccer coach wouldn't play me. And so that was like very eye-opening. And, I went from having, and then I got a round of Gardasil, which has led me into a really deep path of learning about vaccines. After those shots, I was really, really sick. Leading up to that, I didn't really have a normal cycle because of my weight and because of my exercise regimen for soccer. And after that, I was having crazy, crazy endometriosis, passing big chunks. And then I just like, I don't even know, really, really uncomfortable periods. And then I was put on like all these crazy birth controls and hormone pills to like stop my period. And, now I'm still struggling with hormone stuff. I've been on a hormone replacement because I'm trying to get pregnant. And it's just really, it's crazy because I'm kind of jumping ahead, but like I got married last September and every time I go somewhere, people are like, are you pregnant yet? Are you pregnant yet? And it's like super uncomfortable because obviously I know how to, like, I've helped many women get pregnant that were told they could never get pregnant, but it's like so much more than just like having sex, and it's crazy because people, especially women that have gotten pregnant really easily or don't know a lot about hormones, like I think my whole thing from parasites and just having a gluten intolerance and what I think was celiac, but now I don't know, I still am like testing positive for that, but removing gluten for 15 years really helped. But anyway, so that was just kind of like my journey had started when I found that naturopath, and I worked a lot on my hormones and just my diet. And then I went to nutrition school and kind of dug into that. And I felt like everybody around me was kind of on a similar path. They were on their second careers, or they really wanted to help other people, or they're going through cancer or something like that. And so that's what really kind of brought me into wanting to help other people and figuring out more things about myself. And I literally felt like food and I just didn't agree. And with a family that all we did was eat, it was really, really like struggle. And, probably in the last 5 years, I've felt better than I ever have felt in my whole life. So yeah, I feel like I went on a tangent, but sorry about that.
No, it's great. I think it's so important when people share their stories because, especially as health practitioners and we're out there in the world, people can sometimes see us and be like, they have everything figured out. It's like, no, it's a constant journey. And there's so much that you said that I resonated with, like when you were talking about like, it's totally normal. And something that one of my friends said the other day is like, common or normal doesn't mean it's okay. Like if there are hundreds of people experiencing IBS, like there's something happening, but we consider it to be normal because a lot of people have it. Therefore it's okay.
Right. Like, oh, you have diarrhea every time you eat that. Your doctor just says that's normal. Like, what? That's not normal.
No, that's really not normal. That's not normal. Or like cycles. Like I have a friend who spots in between every cycle and has for 20 years. And I'm like, that's not normal. She's like, I've been to my doctor so many times. And he's like, it's fine. And I'm like,
I mean, my OBGYN, now that I've just become more mature and understanding my body more and reading a lot of stuff, but, she would always just be like, I always said I want to go off birth control. Like, I just don't believe in it and the side effects, and I already have enough issues. Like, I don't need to throw any more issues. And we can go on down a whole road of birth control, but I'm not going to go there. But basically, I was just like, she just kept trying to give me pills. And I said, do you know what I'm in nutrition school. Like, I don't want to take pills. And it was just like, she kept telling me that it was normal and I wasn't the only one. And everybody, has really heavy periods that are so uncomfortable. Like, I would have to plan my schedule around my period probably for the last 6 years, where I was like hunched up over in a ball, and I wouldn't take Tylenol or anything because I knew how bad they are for your intestinal lining and just the side effects. So I would like just be in so much pain, like screaming, crying, like miserable for like two days for sure, every single month. And multiple people told me that was normal. And so, it's just crazy. And never did anyone tell me like, hey, like cramping isn't normal, or having like so much blood for 24 hours is not normal. And I just had a new client the other day, and she's super young, and she hasn't had a period in 10 months because they put her on this new type of hormone replacement and metformin, and they told her, oh yeah, it's okay to not get a period. And I was like, okay. So I like, now that I know so much, I'm like coaching her through that, but my mind is continually blown that women can tell other women it's okay to have pain, cramps, no period, spotting, all these things. Like, that's not normal. That means that something else is going on. And if you're just going to take something to make it go away, that means that you're just pushing those symptoms down, and you're not treating the symptom and figuring out like what's going on. Like, why are you bleeding like that? Or why are you not bleeding? Or like, ovulation, like no one talks about ovulation. So I think I'm really passionate about that right now because I'm just going through it personally. And it's something that most women deal with. I would say like 80% of women have some kind of hormonal issue, whatever that issue is, whatever their goal is. But like, if you're not ovulating, you're not having a healthy period, like you can't be healthy. It's another vital sign.
Yes, completely. And when you were talking about, I think all of this requires me to tell you about vaginal steaming. Have you tried it? Do you know about this?
I've like seen it at like some of the Asian places where I've gotten massages, but no, I've never done it.
Okay, so you need to go to kataralove.com. I'm going to send you this link after the show also because I'm so passionate about this. We actually I interviewed Kit, who's the founder of Katara Love, on episode 267. And I bought a steaming kit and I did it at home for a week, but it was so gentle and like so pleasant that I thought it wasn't working. I'm like, that like nothing is happening. And I haven't ovulated in 2 months, which is very like not right for me, and not right for any yoni bodied human. And so I think it's really important that we understand, like you were talking about, like Western medicine and the normals, having things that are, I want to say, like a very old ancient practice that humans have been doing for hundreds of thousands of years. You might want to check it out just because it really helps with ovulation, imbalance in hormones, fertility. Like, this stuff is magic. So I'll definitely send it to you. It's so cool.
Yeah. I just read, I've been reading all the books, but I just read the Fifth Vital Sign, and they talked about it a little bit, and I've like seen it places, but there's just always so many things all the time. And sometimes I'm like, I wish I didn't know so much because I can't even like go to the store and like find things when we were like, but sharing these kinds of things is really eye-opening because I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to that podcast today and send me all the things and I'll read about it and I'll probably order one.
Right. And I've actually switched from the classic seat just to a bowl because I found the seat actually really uncomfortable. Okay. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth checking because like you, it sounds like, especially with hormones, we're probably on the same place. And I got mine just right. And just over the last 3 months, I had to switch thyroid medications because they didn't have, like, the entire world ran out with the whole pandemic thing. Yes. And I had to switch.
I've been on Thyroid since I was 13.
Oh, and when you switch your thyroid medication and they're like, it's the same dosage. I'm like, dude, this is going to be a year until I get this right. So thanks.
Yeah, that's actually really, I had to go get it from like some other new place too, because they like ran out of it and then it was like 3 times more. I'm like, I just want like at least the less natural one. But that's another thing. I'm like, I'm going to stop taking my thyroid medicine. I worked so hard to like, cause you read all these people that are like, if your thyroid's not working, it's because all these other things aren't working. And so I was like constantly, okay, I can get off of it. And so I thought I was doing really well 3 years ago, got off of it. And then all of a sudden I'm like sign a book contract and getting married in the same year.
Oh,
I
God.
Could not get out of bed. Like literally thought I was going crazy, but still getting out of bed and like still trying to work out. And then my naturopath, who's my really good friend, was like, hey, you're getting something sent to your house today. It's your T4, T3 in nature thyroid, because I don't care what you say, like you need this. And then all of a sudden, like 5 days later, I'm a normal person.
Oh, I did the same thing. Like in January of this year, I was like, I so got this. Like my thyroid is perfect. I can totally go off my meds. I lasted like 2 weeks. I was like crazy. Like mine affected my mood so incredibly much. I'd listen to a song and I'd start bawling.
I like,
it got bad. It got really bad. I had to go to a psychiatrist and I was like, I think I need to be put on some serious medication. And thank God on my drive home, my husband was like, have you changed anything with your anything? And I was like, well, I went off my thyroid. And he's like, Leanne.
I know. And isn't it funny how you kind of forget? You're like, are you doing anything different? You're like, no. And they're like, oh yeah, duh, I'm doing this. Like, but I think because we're always doing so many things, but yeah, your thyroid's a little bit important. So yeah.
It's so important. And I really want to touch on this too, because I actually just had coffee with a friend last week who was diagnosed with Hashimoto's 3 years ago, and she refuses to go on medication because she doesn't want to be on medication. And I hear this a lot. And although I'm all for healing your body using herbs and vaginal steaming and like literally anything, but sometimes medication is just needed. And I really want to drive that home, at least on
There's
my
a time and a place for it, right? Like there is a time and a place for it. And I tell people this about the thyroid, like don't feel, because I used to feel super guilty, like why isn't mine working? And like, what am I doing wrong? But there's so many things in our environment and in our homes and in our food systems that we cannot control. Like as much as I am super controlling about everything that I put in my body most of the time, you can't control it all the time. And so sometimes you need a little help. And that's why like Western medicine is very crucial. And there's obviously things that you can try to do. Like I've tried all the thyroid support known to man. I'm also super anemic and have never been able to get my red blood cell count up no matter how much liver I eat, even though I really believe in eating organ meats. But, and the thyroid medicine is huge. So I'm all with you. Like I would tell people to get on it because it's going to change not just your life, but like your day-to-day struggles will probably feel a lot better.
Oh, it's night and day. I am also really anemic. How's your vitamin D? Do you have a hard time getting that up too?
It definitely is. Like I take way more than I even tell my patients to take. And mine is like I actually just did labs last week after 6 months of doing some hormone stuff. And it was only at 54 and I take 10,000 IUs a day.
Dude, mine's at 32 and I have not been able to raise it in 5 years. I do a shot every week at 20,000 IUs.
Oh, you need more than that.
I think it's 20 or is it 50? I get really confused.
I would take
it's 50
and take like 10,000 a day and see if you can get it up. Because 30, like that really can compromise your immune system. And with all this crazy stuff going on, vitamin D. Did you hear Dr. Rhonda Patrick? Do you listen to her?
I do. Yeah.
So did you listen to the podcast she did? I think it was with Joe Rogan. She's actually from San Diego. She is friends with my husband through surfing, but she talked about vitamin D levels, and they were talking about how, Mexican, Latinos, African Americans, how they were getting really hit hard by COVID. And like, they were saying, oh yeah, socioeconomic stuff, which obviously, but one thing that she said was in common across the whole board of people with darker skin, because you have less melanin, because you absorb, when you're in the sun, you absorb less vitamin D. Because you have more melanin because your skin's darker, you absorb less vitamin D. So across the board, they all had very low levels of vitamin D. Isn't that interesting?
So fascinating. I love that.
I have everyone on vitamin D. I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff you can take right now and with COVID going on, but vitamin D is something that everybody should be taking and should be looking at. And that's one thing I say, like a Western doctor would be like, oh, you're fine. And then like, when I look at it, I'm like, you're not fine, So it's good to just be aware of those things. But yeah, anemia is something I was born with, and my dad's whole Italian side of the family has thalassemia. So I've had like injectables, I've drank like the Floridex, done the red blood cell builder, all of that. And the only thing that really makes me feel better is eating organ meats and making sure that I'm on my B vitamins.
Yeah, same. It's so fascinating, like as you learn more and more about your body and more about health, like how quickly you're able to adjust things. And I said the other day on Instagram, just on a story, my estrogen's a little bit lower than I need it to be. And I felt so empowered to be like, okay, my estrogen's a little bit low. I know exactly what to do. I don't need to ask anyone. I don't need to do any research. I just know what to do. And it feels so empowering, and you feel so powerful and in control of your life. And it's really the greatest gift you could ever give yourself is the determination and the commitment to your body and just working toward getting yourself into a balanced space, whatever balance may look for you and your body and your abilities in this moment. But that gift that you give yourself of understanding how a body works, how your body works. Oh, I love it. It's my favorite thing.
Right. It's so easy to like forget too, because you're like me and you're hard on yourself. And then you're like, wait, I have all these tools and like what I just did in my day. Like most people don't even know, why I'm taking this herb or why I'm starting my day with this specific drink or, why I'm adding this mineral to my soup or whatever it is. Like there's so many tools that we've been able to learn through our health struggles. And it's pretty awesome. Yeah. We're definitely like blessed in that way where now I'm going to be vaginal steaming thinking of you.
Yeah. It's not something you hear every day. Okay. So we've chatted a lot about nutrients and food. I'd love to like pick your brain on like the preventative living piece of, cookware to cooking temperatures. Like my family's so bad with that. Like just burn the shit out of a steak. And you're like, no.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you said that. Well, I thought you were going to say burn the shit out of the pan, but like I went to a friend's house recently and she's like, great. They do anything I say. They're like my best clients, even though they're just my friends, but they're like, when you feel good, people are like, oh my God, like you said this and I did it. It's like, wow, someone's listening. Like that's awesome. And parents are the hardest for sure, family. But people just don't make a connection with like cookware. And if you're using an aluminum pan, I mean, look at the rate of Alzheimer's and brain issues, brain fog, cognitive issues that we're experiencing from ADD with a little kid to all the way to Alzheimer's. So aluminum, Teflon, all of those things go right into your food. They leach right into whatever you're touching. Plus, so often do I see people using cookware that has scratches in it, which is crazy. I actually have like a whole blog post on cookware, but just, and right now it's like, I guess this month is supposed to be like plastic free month, which every day should be plastic free month, especially with women with hormonal issues. Both of us, plastics are hormone disruptors. So remove plastic, try to use it as little as you can, not only just for us, but for the environment. I love just, using mason jars, using glass Tupperwares that you can now get like everywhere and they're totally affordable. I love stasher bags, which are silicone bags. I don't cook with them. I know you can, but I'm still a little sketched out by silicone going in my food. But I love storing stuff in them and freezing stuff in them. And I use cast iron, and then I have a couple like European ceramic dishes. But the thing with ceramic, sometimes they have like a Teflon lining. So if you're going to buy something ceramic, just go on their website and read about it and make sure they don't have anything, because sometimes they need a coating. But if you're using a seasoned cast iron, it's pretty much my go-to. What about you?
I'm all for, so I live on a boat, so it's a little bit different because cast iron ruins, like you can't have a cast iron on the ocean.
You have to season it 5 times a day.
Well, yeah, it just doesn't work. So for oven stuff, I have all stainless steel. I hope that's good. I did research on it and it looked pretty good, and it doesn't rust, because rust is a really big problem and we consume a lot of rust on the boat. And then for my pots and pans, they're ceramic, non-Teflon coated pots and pans. And so the problem with living on a boat that I've come into contact with is there's no way to get water that hasn't been in plastic. All of our water is stored in a big plastic jug in the boat that's very clean. I sanitize it every 6 months. So it's UV filtrated, reverse osmosis, remineralized water, blah, blah, but there's still the plastic piece. And my body has reacted to that. And so, whatever. I think also you need to pick your battles, and there's nothing I can do about this.
Well, if you're not on a boat, you can be a little more choosy with your water. Yeah, I'm super into water. We could talk about water for a year, but I like the plastic, just not heating things in plastic and not cooking things in plastic and storing things in plastic, especially if you're kids. I see it all the time and I'm just oh my gosh.
Yeah. The saran wrap over top of
I know.
God.
What about people cook things in aluminum? I watch people, especially, I feel it's kind of a guy thing, wrapping some stuff in aluminum and throwing it on the barbecue or we were just camping and all the boys were doing that. And I buy the hippie aluminum, but still, you don't just use parchment paper or just put it on a baking sheet, a stainless steel baking sheet. So
Yes.
cookware. Okay. So preventative living to me is the biggest thing that I think most people overlook because nobody ever thinks it's going to happen to them. Obviously we feel different because we've had the struggles already, but I mean, I can't even tell you how many, I probably get 1 or 2 cancer referrals a week. And once you've had cancer, you probably have you usually have a lot of other things going on. So it's not just like, okay, we're going to like help with your nutrition. I'm going to look at your lab work and we're going to go from there. It's like, whoa. Like we literally need to do all of the labs and, look at your home and what your toxic load is and all these things. So, I mean, I'm just constantly telling people like, don't you want to, like, if you don't have your health, you have nothing. You can't even have any fun, like if you aren't healthy, like it's life is really shitty. Sorry to say that, but it's kind of true. So don't wait until you're sick to make changes for you and your family. I see so many sick little kids, and it starts from what they're eating at home, and the amount of sugar is the biggest thing that I feel like people just have no connection with. They're drinking these sugary drinks even though they're organic or whatever. And then so that's huge, is just like being a little bit more cognitive of making healthy lifestyle choices now. I do not like to use the word diet or all these like food trends that are going on. And that's something with my book that I was kind of struggling with the word keto on the cover, because I think people think that keto is, or people assume that keto is just, like I said before, like fat, cheese wrapped in bacon, and that you have to log your food and you have to be super strict. And my whole book's philosophy is anti-inflammatory living. So if you can, every single day do a little bit more to reduce your inflammation, you are going to already be hacking that preventative living that I was talking about. So you mentioned earlier, like, what have I done to reduce my inflammation? And I just want to touch on inflammation really fast, because I think people think like, oh, I'm not inflamed. And it's like, do you have eczema? Do you have, do you get bloated after eating? Do you have pain? Like all of those are inflammatory responses that's happening in the body. So just because, you have perfect skin, but maybe you have diarrhea after eating, like that's inflammation. So I've never met a person that doesn't have inflammation. So if you can, and cancer, that's an inflammatory disease, right? So I think that people need to understand like, okay, we all have inflammation, and how do we combat that?
Yes, completely. How inflammation shows in my body is psoriasis. Anytime I have just the slightest bit of corn starch, any grains, I get psoriasis on the like crown of my scalp.
Huh. Have you had that for a really long time?
Oh, since I was little, but psoriasis was like all over my body. It was so bad. And I didn't know until probably 5 years ago, where I was like, oh, every time I eat grains, I get psoriasis. So I always know if I've like overdone it, like if we eat out, and I can be so careful, but then the next day I'm like itching my scalp and it hurts so bad. And it's like, oh, it's terrible. But you go to a doctor and they're like, yeah, just use this shampoo. It's fine.
Yeah, use this like horrible cream that has all these other side effects. It's going to like overtake your liver.
Exactly.
I have a couple of things I'll send you that really have helped my clients with psoriasis that are like great tools. You probably already have them in your toolkit, but I'll send it to you. Just that
I will happily receive. So
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say the skin stuff to me is really interesting, because so many people, especially women, have skin stuff and they never, like, your skin is your largest organ, and women don't relate like things that are going inside the body with the outside of the body, which is super interesting. And so like psoriasis or acne or maybe some rashes going on like that, your skin is like, it's detoxing from the inside out. So there's something else going on inside. Like for you, it's your digestion is affecting your skin. And so it's creating that inflammatory response. So it's really interesting when I try to explain that to people, because like a light bulb goes off, putting a cream on the outside isn't going to really fix what's going on in the inside. And so that's something that like repairing the gut intestinal lining and, doing an elimination diet and just figuring out what foods are causing that reaction. Because most people don't realize that like one food is making them feel X way. And that's really hard. So that's like one thing I'm like, okay, if you get a migraine, I keep getting client or people that are reaching out that have migraines. I just had one yesterday and I was like, okay, well, every time you get that migraine, write down like the last 24 hours of food and we're going to start to make a connection. And they're like, oh, it's not related to food. I don't have a food allergy. That's always just like so interesting to me. Have you had that come up at all?
Oh yeah, all the time. All the time, especially with my husband. Like it's so fascinating to like witness his relationship to his body because he's never really quote unquote had any problems.
Same.
And to like watch, like for probably like the last couple of weeks, he's been like having a lot of gastrointestinal issues. And I know that he's really sensitive to coffee. And I've told him this a bazillion times. And, he'll stop with coffee and then he'll start again. And then he'll, be running to the bathroom directly after drinking coffee. And I'm like, so how are you feeling? He's like, I'm fine. I'm like, yep. Oh, okay. And I'm like, what about coffee? He's like, no, I'm not allergic to it. I'm like, okay. Oh yeah. Okay, sure. Sometimes, yeah, I've had that. I've had family, I've had clients, I've had a lot of people just say, well, it can't possibly be food. And I don't think it's not them thinking this. It's like the medical community and improper training. Like think of health class as a child and what we learned in health class. Like it was a total joke.
The food pyramid, just eat grains and.
Exactly. In Canada, it was something different. We had a pyramid for like the first couple years, but then we upgraded to something else. And I honestly couldn't tell you what it is.
Some other type of food pyramid.
Yeah, there were lots of grains and a lot of dairy. And so, yeah, just understanding what feels good in your body is so incredibly important. And people don't make the connection. And that's one of the reasons I got started with Healthful Pursuit and sharing what I did way back when did I start the blog? 2008 of like, oh, wow. It's been a while, my friend, of like really trying to show people like, if you're having symptoms, like this is not normal. And, the pain and the inflammation and all these things, this is not normal. And here's what it can feel like. And it's an ever shifting experience, like everything we've chatted about today. It's not like you change one thing and all of a sudden you've reached the peak and then it's easy and all the things. And it's a constant evolution. And I think at first when I got started with nutrition, I was really overwhelmed, getting diagnosed with celiac disease when I was like 20. And I was like, I don't care and I don't know. And this doesn't impact me. I don't care. It can be really overwhelming to make big changes. And that's why, and total segue to your amazing book, can you tell us about your book? Because I think it really helps connect people with the pleasures of food, the knowledge of nutrition. I'd love to spend some time you just sharing your beautiful masterpiece.
Thank you. Oh yeah. You know firsthand how hard a book is. And it's kind of like, I don't have any kids, so it's kind of like my first child. So I said when I was reading those Amazon reviews, it was like a knife in my chest. But, I wrote this book because I love to eat. I love food. I love everything that has to do with food. Like we talked about just family and friends and, just creating something that you love that you could share. And, Mexican food is across the board, I think, something that everybody loves. And it's actually ancestral. Like if you look at what Mexicans were eating for the last couple hundred years, it actually is pretty keto. So wild fish and game and just lots of veggies from the garden, lard, butter, things like that. And, tortillas and beans and grains, that's kind of like a new age thing. It's more of a Americanized, like a lot of the Mexican food you see in America is definitely not what they're eating. Unfortunately now, because of the United States, we've really poured over our bad habits over the border and created this sugar-laden, carb-heavy diet. And so I worked with a lot of people with diabetes and obesity. I worked in, a place where we only saw people that were really struggling with metabolic syndrome. And just, I kept seeing a common theme. Like I would see 30 to 40 people in a day for nutrition, and they would see the cardiologist and the doctor, and then they'd see me. And I kept seeing the same thing. Like people didn't know what to eat. It was so overwhelming. And so my whole goal of my book was to make food attainable, make people be able to understand like where inflammatory foods come from and what that means, how to make tasty, delicious food really simple. And then you can kind of create your own from that. So the book is comprised of lots of nutrition, little tidbits. So if you do read through it, like you're going to get some basically a lot of free info of my years and years of studying on myself and others and reading and learning. So make sure you take that in, because I think a lot of people, I've just gotten so many notes from people saying they've read my whole book and it was like an eye-opening experience. They were so scared of fat, and through the 90s we were pushing low fat, and fat not only has the flavor, that's where the taste is, but it has so much of the nutrients, and a lot of the low fat-free foods are just so, like, you have to make it taste good, so they're just filled with sugar. So I talk about that. I talk about how to use fat in the kitchen and oxidation and all those things that happen when you're and just ways to cook in the kitchen and little hacks. And then it's filled with tons of vegetables, tons of seafood, meat. So if you're vegetarian, the book is great for you too. Definitely if you're like a super strict vegan, it might be a little bit hard. That's not something I promote, and I see a lot of people with issues that struggle with that. But the whole ketogenic Mexican cooking is just a high-fat, anti-inflammatory food, ways to cook food. And I do have a little chapter in the back that I named No Es Keto, because I couldn't write a keto book without having some some of my grandma's recipes, like rice, where I have one with rice and one with cauliflower rice. I have like a bean recipe. I have like a super yummy quesadilla with like squash and hibiscus flowers, and like some enchiladas and things like that. But I give ways to, use maybe an alternate tortilla, which I have a recipe for that uses coconut flour and cassava. And yeah, like the whole book is very simple recipes. There's nothing that's, too difficult. And I love cookbooks. I love cooking. I have so many books, and sometimes I feel really overwhelmed when I open a book and I don't have one of the ingredients, or when something is hard or I don't understand it. And so I normally would never pick that book up again. And so that was my goal, is that if you pick my book up and you read it, you'll have or all of the ingredients. And once you cook on my recipes, it's so simple and so satisfying that you'll want to cook more. And that's like a lot of the feedback I've been getting. So I'm super stoked that I was able to create that across all of the different chapters. I have tons of little snacks and salad dressings and sauces that are like go-tos. And I am assuming you probably meal prep too. Like meal prep especially is something not only good for just busy people, but like families. And, we're all super busy in our own ways, whether you're working at a desk job or you just have a family to feed. So I'm constantly making a bunch of sauces and dressings, because then when you are eating dinner or lunch or whatever you're eating, you feel like you're eating all these, like a kind of complex meal, but you already made those sauces and dressings or protein already ahead of time. And so I talk a lot about that too.
It is such an epic quest to undergo creating a book, especially a good book. And I just want to say mad kudos to you for creating this, because especially going off your thyroid medication and also getting married and all the things, I did not appreciate how much time, energy, and your heart, soul, blood, sweat, tears, everything is put into this masterpiece. And just to hear you talk about it, you can tell how much attention you put into everything. And I just wanted to take a moment to appreciate that, because it's such a big deal. So congratulations.
Isn't it crazy though? You go into a store or you go into a boutique and there's books everywhere, and you're like, well, all these people did it. Why? It can't be that hard. And it took me probably, I would say, almost 3 years to even get someone to even read my proposal, because they're like, oh, you don't have 500,000 followers on Instagram, and you're not a model, or you're not a celebrity, no one's gonna buy your book. And literally I would go and do presentations, a family friend knew someone, or this person knew someone. And it was it was just the one thing I learned in this is never give up, especially I was all I want to do is help people live a healthier life. Why is this so hard? As you know, it's just, it's your baby, and then people are oh, nobody wants to read this, or nobody wants to know this. So anyway, it was just, it's such a humbling experience. But I put my head down, and I knew I had good intentions, and that I was going to help a lot of people, and in a very tasty way. And so it happened. So I really appreciate your kind words, because most people don't understand what goes into a book. And that's why when you get 1 star from not having nutritional content, you're like, dude, do you even know my life? And it's not so But yeah, I do appreciate that. And I just hope that I can help more people and that your audience finds my book, helpful in their journey and tasty, because food is so awesome. And so we're so blessed to be able to like share food with loved ones and prepare these healthy but tasty meals. And yeah.
Couldn't agree more. And where can people find your book?
So it's on Amazon. It's just the Mexican Keto Cookbook. And unfortunately, due to COVID, like I have it in tons of, bookstores and little boutiques and stuff in a lot of areas. But right now, I think just Amazon is the easiest place. And it's only $13 right now on Amazon. And if you can leave me a review, reviews help so much. You probably know the same thing. Like it's the paid advertising and stuff, which I can't compete with. Like reviews just help so much.
They help immensely, like so
I never knew that. And so now I'm like reviewing everybody and every product that like I love. And like even like for me too, like if I didn't like a product or like, I would just write the person and be like, this is what happened, but I would never like write this super mean thing on their thing. So positive. Let's keep positive.
I love that. I'm so not that person. If I don't like something, I'll be nice about it, but it's something I've really tried in my own like mental wellness, because I'm such a people pleaser of like, it's really important for me now to be like, I didn't like this book because of these reasons, but I really, really appreciate it because of these reasons. And it just wasn't the book for me because of these reasons. And I think like if I read a review as an author of that, it's like, okay, cool. Like clearly this wasn't the right book for you. And
that's okay.
Yeah. But it's like the hateful ones, like this person deserves to die. And it's like, what?
Like, are you even Mexican? Like, you're probably not even Mexican. Like, none of these recipes are Mexican. And I was like, do you want like to see my DNA? Like,
oh, it's too great. And it really, really helps us learn more about ourselves for sure. With every review that I used to read, it was like, oh, okay, how could I take this differently? And what work can I do on this? And it's definitely an experience writing a book, and such a unique experience. And I really appreciate all the work you put into yours. And for coming on the show today, Torie. Thank you so much for hanging out with me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so like happy to connect, and I love all of your work, and I'm kind of sad that you kind of went off Instagram because I used to like love reading all your stuff, but I get it, girl.
Yeah, it's been quite freeing. I mean, I go on there every couple weeks, but it's not like it was before, and I actually have so much more time to like not care about what other people are doing on Instagram.
Time suck for sure.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And we will have you back anytime you would like.
Oh, thank you.
Next up on the podcast, Sunday, September 20th, we have episode 271, where David Hauser is talking to us about questioning the common health narrative. Sunday, September 27th, we have episode 272, where we're chatting with Dr. Jason Fung about fasting, calorie counting, and how to make it all work for your eating style. So I will see you then. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Keto Diet Podcast. Join us again in a couple of days to discover more Keto for Women secrets for your fat-fueled life. The Keto Diet Podcast, including show notes and links, provides information in respect to healthy living, nutrition, and diet, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor should it be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Keto Diet Podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without any representations or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice, and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.